Let's go. Ladies and gents, boys and girls, I got my boy Malte Niebelschuetz in the house. Thanks for being here, brother.
It's an honor. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, now listen, guys. Malte is not only a social entrepreneur, he runs a business that we'll dive into called Shore Buddies, where I believe out of recycled plastic out of the ocean, you manufacture toys. Is that more or less?
We don't take the plastic actually out of the ocean, but we became famous for making the world's first stuffed animal on a mass market level out of recycled plastic.
Out of recycled plastic. Malte is also a world traveler and has been on the road for the last 12, 13, 15 months. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, something like that. 18 months, give or take at this point.
That's pretty awesome. And lastly, Malte is a big believer in personal development. Hence, he brought us his self-published book, The Art of Self-Destruction.
The book that no one wants, but everybody needs.
Well, and we'll link to it in the show notes. But Malte, welcome. Thanks for being here today. I'd say one of the first things in order for our audience to get to know you a little bit better, just give us a little bit of your background, where you studied, kind of what route you took then. Did you merge into entrepreneurship right away? What was that like for you? And how did you end up in America? Because I have forgot to mention it in the introduction, Malte, like myself, is originally from the good old fatherland, Germany.
That's right, Ace. That's right. Yeah. So I try to stick to the major key points of my life journey, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as you said, I'm originally from Germany, born and raised, grew up there, went to school there, then went to college. In school, I grew up in a city called Kassel. For anyone trying to find it on the map, it's literally the middle of Germany. So grew up there, went to school, and then for college, I went to up north to Hamburg, and this is actually something which really propelled, I think, all my business career so much forward, because it was kind of a dual education where I had the chance to be in college for 8 weeks, and then I was with the company, kind of like a trainee position, for the other 8 weeks, and was switching around for a whole 4 years, and so I got a lot of work experience really early on.
Absolutely. So what you're saying is you didn't only go to college, you actually had a side job. No, you had a real job where you were a trainee, a rotary on many different positions in the firm, where you learned the business while you were going to college. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that was actually very important because I was literally done with school. After high school, after the Abitur, I was like, I don't want to go to college. I'm I need to go into the workforce. I'm very practical, get things done kind of thing. Always had that mindset, I guess. So I applied, as you know, in Germany, the Ausbildung, which is kind of the trade school. And I was already having a position, and then I got drafted actually by the military. So.
Oh, you were young enough to still be drafted by the military. So was I.
Yeah. So I did my 9 months there, and there I actually learned because there were other high school graduates from all over the country. And there was one guy, he was with me in the dorms and stuff, and he told me about those kind of positions, right, where you get your college degree and you work and you get full-time pay, right?
Right.
I mean, you get your trainee pay, right?
Right,
But
of course, a journeyman's pay, so to speak.
Exactly. But it's great. I made more money than.
That's better than graduating with $100,000 in student loans, right?
Yeah, I figured, if I have to go to school a little bit longer, at least pay me for it.
Right. No, I think that's beautiful. My sister, actually, I don't know if you remember that, but in Germany it was very common to take BAföG.
Yes.
Which is a stipend, a grant for students who go to college.
I think it's an interest-free loan, because technically you have to pay back, or half of it is kind of forgiven.
Yeah, it's very mild, it's very forgiving, and even in Germany, some students like my sister use it to fund their living expenses. But if you can get practical experience and you get paid half a journeyman's salary, it's wonderful, to have that and come out of college without crippling debt.
Yeah, no, for me it was like, besides the whole financial aspect, I had an opportunity to really get like responsibility and leadership positions because of that kind of like trainee position, and like had that with 22 years old. I was like leading a whole project management team like on $1 million contracts. So like it was really exciting, and that helped me to really start like ahead compared to like other graduates.
That makes sense. What type of firm and what type of work did you do at that point in time?
So I went to college and got a degree in business and informatics. And I was...
And informatics, we would say computer science here,
Computer
right?
science, yeah.
Right.
So like I have a pretty much tech background, but kind of on the business side. And I was working, so my collaboration partner was Deutsche Telekom, or T-Systems, which is kind of like the AT&T of Germany. And I was on the business customer side, right? So like we had really exciting customers like the airport in Hamburg, Edeka, like a huge grocery store. We I remember one of the projects I was on, we're building the supermarket of the future, right? And that was like in 2006, right? It was like where your shopping cart automatically scans what you put in there, and we had like voice over IP,
how fun.
like in the whole thing, and it was really cool.
And did you say your company that you did the apprenticeship with was T-Mobile?
T-Systems.
T-Systems.
So, yeah, but it's like the same corporation.
But that's the
T-Systems.
overarching company is T-Mobile, right?
The overarching company, I think it's called Deutsche Telekom. So
Deutsche Telekom, yeah.
So.
Well, I worked for Deutsche Telekom. That's where I did my Berufsausbildung in Elmshorn as well.
No,
Yeah, that's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah, I remember Deutsche Telekom went public in 95, and then it became T-Mobile.
Right.
And two, we had wild things. We had the first video conference call via glass fiber optics between Elmshorn or Hamburg and then Frankfurt. And we did a group video conference call, and we were all so excited that this worked. And now you can do a group video conference call via WhatsApp on your phone. It's funny how times have changed.
Absolutely. I remember that we were like, also like building out massive conference rooms, right, with video, like a whole like installation of that was like $25,000, right? And now like with COVID, everyone's like, oh yeah, just open up your Zoom, it's like it became to like standard like that, and we were like really heavily selling those kind of like expensive equipment installation.
Interesting. So now you finish this, you finish your studies, you finish your practical work. Where do you go after that?
So after I graduated, I got a very exciting job and moved to Düsseldorf, and I was in the chief knowledgement office, and we built back to kind of like virtualization. So like we build like virtual team rooms for like a global connected enterprise with 20,000 employees all around the world, and we're connecting engineers in Brazil with Japan and Germany. So literally building a LinkedIn within the company infrastructure, and like getting all the same like system and platforms and stuff like that. And I really started that job, and that's actually something an advice I would give everyone, like pick your first job after college, not by the salary, not by the company or anything like that. Pick it by your boss. Pick the person where you can learn the most.
Sure, and I think I feel that 100%. However, I think there's a challenge to it. How do you pick a job where you know the boss before you pick the job? You know what I mean? Like, that's tough.
Well, it is, but like you kind of network already around, right? So like you build your network and like use your internships for like those kind of things.
Connections,
A lot of times like the internships you have during college, or the volunteer work, right? So it's kind of like get there, and then also see who is recognized in their field. Like
Sure.
you look them up on LinkedIn if they have anything interesting to share. So that's there, and also always in an interview ask questions back. Let them ask all the questions only.
Yeah, exactly. So to just summarize your point, one, you're saying, hey, if you are starting your career, don't look at the money as much, but really like focus on what you can learn and who you can work with. And I think that's a very good point. If we can be cognizant of that and at a younger age, it's a nice thing to bring into our lives for sure.
Yeah, and for me, like the journey never stops. The learning never stops, right? So like every day you try to learn and surround yourself with the people you can learn from, right? Like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're at the wrong room.
I feel that. So when you go from now having this job where you are having a lot of responsibility already, where you're building out these virtual chat rooms, how did you mosey on from living in a smaller, well, not small city, but smaller city in Germany, to then coming to the United States and starting your own startup? What did that transition look like?
Yeah, so it was kind of like a very interesting situation. I always say like San Diego found me. I didn't find San Diego, but it's not gonna let me go anymore.
Right.
But I was in Düsseldorf at that time, I think for like 2 years, and with my girlfriend at that time, she just recently finished her PhD, and then got a scholarship from the German government to do a so-called postdoc abroad. And she applied literally all around the world in biotech, and had a couple of different job offers, and at one point she calls me, and I'm sitting in my office in Düsseldorf, and she was like, hey, I have this job opportunity in San Diego. I was like, how is that gonna work? You don't speak any Spanish. My Spanish sucks. Like, how are we gonna make that happen? What are you talking about? It's like Santiago de Chile, like South America. They speak Spanish down there. She's like, no. San Diego, California. Look it up. So like, I looked it up, and like, like me, ignorant German, right? Completely like California. It's the Hollywood sign and the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
So like,
no, for a lot of Germans, San Diego wasn't really on the map until, the last 10, 15 years ago, honestly.
Yeah. So like, I really never heard of it, and then I looked it up, and it's like, Google San Diego, boom, first picture comes on is Pacific Beach, crystal clear surfer right around sunset. That's nice.
Right.
Wait, this is an option now?
Right.
And then I look outside my office window. I remember it was like September. It was rainy, snowy, and like, what? No. What is the weather in San Diego right now? What's the climate? It's like 300 sunny days a year, 68 degrees year round. And like, baby, let's go.
Right.
So
I feel it. I like that for you.
And 6 months later, we were here.
Okay, so that brought you to San Diego. And from there, then, how did you transition into your business?
It's the typical immigrant story, I kind of guess. So when I came here, I literally saw like, I'm just gonna stay in tech, like go back to like project management, and applied to a couple of different companies, all of that, and got invited to very few interviews. But then the ones I got invited to, I ended up getting the job offers. But I didn't really like the jobs. And
Right.
The payment for it was, for me, not really feasible compared to like what job I left in Germany. So I was not really too interested in that. And then I thought like, you always wanted to do your own thing. Maybe this is the time. So like, no one is really giving you a job that you feel it's worse for you. So build your own thing. And at that time, I just connected with the whole biotech and science community in San Diego, and we ended up developing an inventory management out of the cloud. So like I hired developers, offshore and really developed the whole system. Where, like, cloud computing really started to become a thing back then. And sold it to a couple of labs in San Diego. So that was actually my first startup before SureBuddy.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So you had a little bit of a business exit.
Yeah, so we never sold it, but we had a couple of clients that were like on a monthly basis, but it was very interesting, like the lessons I learned for like startups, just like by doing that. I honestly had no idea what I was doing.
Sure.
Like I started an LLC, this and that. For me, it was a consulting business. I didn't really even treated it as a startup, but then what happened is that a very similar solution got developed by a big tech company, and they had VC money, funding. They were from the Bay Area, and their whole concept was like offering pretty much a solution for free.
Oh, wow.
And the tech, there's the saying, you might know this, is if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Sure.
Right. So, and that's kind of like really what it was in the beginning. And also now it's actually, they changed their business model. But for me, seeing all of that, understanding, like, okay, well, if you want to raise money, those like kind of certain things you have to do, like you have to acquire like your customers first and
Sure.
fast. That was really kind of like gave me some background and kind of like how to build a company, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the startup world is interesting. I had a startup as well, and one of the things that I felt like you just said that resonate with me is I didn't know what I was doing running a startup. I tried to read everything I could. I went to a lot of startup boot camps. I joined the startup or got accepted into the startup leadership program here in San Diego. And I kind of learned by doing how to do a startup, how to raise money, how to do all of that. But like when I started out, I felt like I was a banker with limited knowledge of business. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. And that's exactly about you did the right thing, right? It's like if you don't have that education, and like I feel something needs to like open up for you to just like even have this like, oh wait, this is an option, right? For like no one in Germany like taught me about entrepreneurship or anything like that. It's like corporate, go there, work there. And I know it's like, a lot of parts in the US is kind of like the same mentality, but like coming to San Diego then, kind of like half being forced to start my own business and then learning about like the whole startup world and like how you build that, and now actually ending up teaching about entrepreneurship. I just recently had a workshop in the Philippines, in Manila, about social entrepreneurship. So like I really love those kind of concepts and actually using business even for solving social causes we have on this planet.
That's super cool. Now, you're here, you have your first startup, then you get out of that. What made you start Shore Buddies? And what's the journey been like so far? Because it's been ups and downs, I know that, but...
Well, yeah, it's definitely been ups and downs. I mean, that's with every company, it's with everything, like that's literally just life. Because the thing with entrepreneurship is what you have to have is resilience, right? Like, it's like
absolutely
train your resilience muscle. You will need that one, and you cannot get like all crazy and hyped up. It's like, if like when everything is going well, you kind of like have to stay okay. This is good, but this will shall pass, right? And the same goes with the downs. So you just have to kind of like maneuver through that. And the entrepreneurs I always see like succeeding in that. They like just love the challenges, It's like they're adapting and kind of like a little bit crazy myself like that. It's right. Like, it's like, oh, okay, this is a challenge. It's literally, you never have any problems. You always have like a new challenge that you just have to adjust the puzzle a little bit. So that was really exciting. And with Shore Buddies, it honestly started out with with a crazy idea, right? So, and it was inspired pretty much by Patagonia, the outdoor brand.
Yeah.
And when I read an article about how they make their T-shirts, jackets, all from recycled plastic.
Oh, I never knew that Patagonia is it all their own materials?
I don't think it's
well,
all
majority?
of their material, but they were like, I mean, nowadays like recycled PET and clothes and fashion, it's such a common thing. They were literally just the first one of the first ones that have been doing it since the 90s, right? And for me, that was literally closing the loop. And since it was like that's a phenomenal business idea, right? Like in Germany, we're like raised to recycle everything, rinse your yogurt cup, do this and that, right? And then you like learn actually what is happening with that recycling. It's kind of like, okay, this is like not really coming back to that. So like I was so fascinated by that concept of Patagonia, how they literally turned this waste into something new. And then I had kind of like entrepreneurial spirit kick in, so I was reading it on my laptop. So I get up looking for a pen and paper to just write down ideas.
Right.
What other things you can make from recycled plastic, and the first thing I literally saw was a stuffed seagull.
Right.
That made the move, like, you know, at the coast up in Hamburg, Sylt, you know, the coast is there, the seagulls are there. They've always kind of like been for me the sound of the ocean and freedom. So like I bought a souvenir seagull at Hamburg once and then made the move with me to San Diego. I saw that once, like, hey, if you can make a T-shirt, you can probably make a stuffed animal. And no one has done it before us back then. And like a year later, we had our product in the market.
Cool. And then, how was that business journey for you? What was your goal? Because obviously it's under the rubric of social entrepreneurship. You're taking, let's say, like old materials, you're recycling them, you're creating something new, you're creating, you know, a toy for kids, which is great. And at the same time, you know, it's hard to scale a business. Like, it's hard to survive as a business. Most small businesses die within the first years of being in business. Tell us a little bit more about that story. Like, you know, of course, now you have a business idea, and within a year you have proof of concept, you have a real product. But what happened then? You know, like, and how does that lead into today of you traveling around the world?
Yeah, it never really started out with that big idea that I have now. Like everything kind of really like developed over the years. So it really started with this crazy product idea. Okay, let's do that. Like, let's see what we can do here. And back then, I wasn't on a green card. I was not even like a citizen, right? Of the US. So like I was on this non-immigrant visa, which already was like sponsored by the tech startup. And so like I started Show Buddies on the side, just like to see if there's any market, any potential there. But from the beginning, I always thought like we have to build a brand, right? We don't just like release a product. You have to be a brand. We have to be recognizable, and it was literally like just testing the waters at the very beginning, like locally here in San Diego, then eventually all California, Oregon.
How did you sell it? Like, were you?
that was the funniest thing. So like there was not really like we do like e-commerce and like, you know, like retail and all of that. But when it started out, man, it was literally me getting in the car, like driving to, you know, like those souvenir shops you see on the boardwalk, like like I walked in there like, hey, I have product, right? So like, hey, buy this from me. And, you know, learning about like all of that, like the first 100 stores where we our first 100 retail partners, I literally walked in by myself and like, hey, I have a dolphin, I have a seagull, buy this is cool, this is the concept. And I got some traction. And then
and people were receptive to it in general?
People were receptive to it. They liked the idea because it was something very unique. It was something very much not seen at this point. But it was two things that I also started realizing quickly is that I need help. Like really understanding this industry, like this is way bigger than kind of like, you know, building out a distribution network and doing all of that. And the other thing is our product, like it needed improvement.
Sure,
Let's
of
go
course.
with that, right?
That's a big thing to realize. I didn't actually, say that too in an interview, right? Like, not everybody is there. I have friends running their own stuff or trying to get their own stuff off the ground, and some of my friends, I can't even tell what I truly think of the product because they're just not that open to constructive feedback.
Yeah, well, that's something like I feel that as an entrepreneur, you kind of like really have like leave your ego at the door. It's like be a sponge when it comes to feedback. Like but be smart about it. Like everyone has an opinion, and everyone should be heard. But like be able to read through trends and understand what's going on. But for me, it's like feedback is the best thing you can have. Like I always tell everyone at the company, it's like every customer interaction is an opportunity to learn what they really think about us. Like to is an opportunity to leave a good impression. Like even if they complain or anything like that, it's like we turned the unhappiest customers into like raging fans of shore bodies.
That's awesome. So from the feedback, you learn how to make the product better.
Yeah, like in the beginning, but I really think it's if you don't hate the first version of your product, you're launching too late, right? It's really execution over perfection. You have to move, and your product is never ready, right? Like our second batch in production looked very different than our first batch. Our third batch, like it has to get better.
It was an incremental process.
Everything has to get better, right? And like now still, like we see things, and it's sometimes not that visible for the customer anymore between like the fourth quarter charge of 2023 and the second quarter charge of 2024, right? But we still make minor adjustments like all the time and improving the product every single time.
That's awesome. And then you lived in California more or less 12 years.
11 years and 11 months, yes sir.
Yeah. So last year then you decide business is okay, but could be generating more money. Money is tight here. I live on the income from my business. And I feel like I can't scale this business the way I want to, if I understood you correctly, right? And so you make a decision to leave, to work on yourself more, and to, I think you started writing this book earlier, but to, publish a book, and then also travel around the world and find a way to make your business bigger than what it is. Just to name a few things.
Yeah, so it was for me really two things. After almost 12 years in San Diego, I really felt I kind of like needed a change of scenery for at least a little bit. I mean, I've been always traveling, like especially in the toy industry. It's a global business, right? So I've always been traveling, like to the trade shows and going and doing all of those kind of things. But it was always kind of like this rush back to San Diego, right? So like I was always wanted to like explore and see more and like how
more of the world
culture works. And I feel if you work in a global industry, you have to understand the world a little bit more. You know, like how different cultures, how different countries, how different systems work, how do they operate, what's important for them, and I love trade, man. Like I really love business. I think that's really what makes the world go around. So for me, that's always exciting to see. So like the travel was, yes, personal growth, like doing all of that, but like I really made many contacts like in business, and was able to publish that book and go to book fairs. So it was really, really exciting time. But there's a time and a place for everything. So like now, after 18 months pretty much on the road, I'm ready to settle a little bit more permanent.
Hunkering down and grind on the business again.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is really what it's there. I mean, I've always been kind of like working on the road. Like this is with Show Buddies, we never really had an office space, right? Or like the whole team, everyone was always like working remotely. That was really one of the early on principles of the business, that we can really work from anywhere.
Right.
And I really took that to the extreme, I guess I want to say, but really what you need is a Google Voice account, internet connection, and a laptop.
An email address.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so interesting. Now, some people, I would, if I'm not mistaken, from a revenue generating standpoint, see your business currently, or at least for a few years, as a lifestyle business, meaning it supports your life, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't support 50 or 100 employees at this point in time. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge when you bootstrap a company, right?
Sure.
So at the same time, you kind of want to work full time in your business and your operations, while at the same time you have to pay yourself then from the generating revenue, right? You have to take that out of the company, and once you have a couple of employees, contractors, then they are on the payroll, right? So it's really the operation of that, and how to put all of those things together. So it financed a couple of people, but not to a scale where we really had 100 or 500 employees.
Right. So now you have a lifestyle business that's bootstrapped essentially. You're at a point where you've been here for a long time, you're leaving, you're traveling. What are some of the biggest, part of the book is called The Art of Self-Destruction, but what are some of the biggest setbacks you've had as a human being and as an entrepreneur, right? And what would you do differently viewing them through your lens of what you've learned today? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's probably so many things throughout the whole business journey that really happened, that where I did not make the right decision, and 100%, this is your ideally try not to say the same mistake twice, right?
Right.
There's so many things doing differently. I really have a big one. I would never start a company Shore Buddies that big, by myself. I think it's really something to think about the founding team, who's going to be a co-founder, who's going to build this with you together, and grow it literally from an idea into something and beyond. And that's something, if you I would never be a solo founder again.
Why do you say that? Obviously it's very rough to make all these decisions by yourself, but why do you say that?
I think it's really better if you have someone who is really involved, that has kind of skin in the game.
Sure.
To talk about the business, talk about ideas, and really develop that together. And we all have weaknesses, right?
Sure.
So ideally what you want to do as a CEO, as a founder, is to find someone who's covering your weaknesses. So you really are a good team, and a co-founder who is complementing your weaknesses, and you have both more strengths together, is way more valuable than paid hand to a paid hire.
Yeah, especially if there's skin in the game and everybody has the same motivation to hustle. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so as far as one biggest setback, what would you say? Like you said, not starting the company alone, but is there anything else where you'd say, hey, this was a big setback, I almost gave up running this business, or what's any of that look like for you?
The thing it really is what it comes down to, especially when you have a CPG consumer product, is really cash flow. Is really tough to handle, right? You so many times you need to make payment happen, right? Either paying a manufacturer, a supplier, or making payroll happen, right? And there's literally no money in the bank account, and you just literally have no idea how to get to the next week. You just have to make it happen, right? So and there are certainly setbacks. I remember one really big setback where we had a negotiation. We had a couple of containers coming in, and we had a negotiation with our supplier. So we had a cash flow issue at that time.
Right.
And we negotiated and pretty much made a deal. It's like, okay, you get that X amount now, and then you release the containers for us, and then we'll pay the rest in the next 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that agreement, and then someone on the supplier team kind of like pulled the trigger and like, no, this is not happening. So the port kind of like did not release the containers to us. We were not able for our trucks to go there, pick up the containers, because the supplier is like, you have to pay us.
Right.
And if we have a situation like that, the port is charging you heavily for containers, right? And this is like something where you really make everything possible happen to make that payment, to negotiate that deal, right? And
then somebody trips you up.
And it's like, boom, no, this is not happening. We're like, what now? So
yes.
Those are setbacks that, you try to grow from, you try to learn from, and just kind of like see how it keeps on going.
Right, I feel that. Now, and thank you for sharing that. Now, you're leaving San Diego, and give us just a brief synopsis of where you've traveled to, and then have you worked on your business the whole time while you were traveling, and is that what paid your bills to travel? Because a lot of people would like to leave their day job, right? Like we've seen this after COVID, during COVID, people were happy to go home. The ones who had work from home oftentimes enjoyed it. Yeah, they miss their work colleagues and friends, but in general, people realize there's more to life than just working 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 8 to 6 in a company, until you're 65, 70 years old, right? A lot of people have realized that's not necessarily what they want to do. So tell us a little bit more about your travels and how you fund them and how all of that works for you.
Yeah. First, let me start off though, which actually what my biggest issue always been like working corporate. I always felt you're getting paid more for attendance than for efficiency and results.
Oftentimes that is the case, yes.
And for me, it was like absolutely something I could never really do. It's like, okay, I have all the results you're asking me for, right? It's literally my job definition. I've done that, and there's like 20 hours left of the week, right? Like I'm not getting paid more. Like give me a different contract, I'm happy to do other things, right?
Sure.
But it was like really tapped out, but I still had to be there. So like I never really liked that, and it was kind of like a culture we set up in at Sure Buddies and like other companies like I consult with or like involved with. Like it's always the same, right? Like I feel everyone in a startup should have an entrepreneur mindset as well, right? Which is a really problem-solving scenario.
Right.
And I'm an automations guy, right? Like I love automation, and just like what allows me to being able to travel and work remotely, right? So
sure.
Like, I'm still working every single day. Like according to my youngest nephew, it's always Uncle Malte is always in vacation and never.
Right, I view it.
So that's kind of like, you have the freedom to work from anywhere you want or anywhere you can. And then, of course, there are like industry events. There was the LA Toy Fall Preview Show just recently. And for those events, like you have to be on location. Sometimes you have certain meetings or the workshops, those kind of things. But so I really catered my travels around those, fixed appointments I have throughout the year. And then in between, I gave up my apartment here in San Diego, and San Diego is a very expensive place.
Yeah.
It's literally the least, or the most, the less affordable city.
The least affordable city in the US.
The least affordable city in the US, right?
Yeah.
So like it's, the other places of the world, like your dollar goes far, like Mexico.
Oh yeah, currency
Argentina.
arbitrage.
Yeah, the Philippines. Like I always say, like once you've been in California, the rest of the world is not that expensive,
But that's very, very true. And I've talked about this ad nauseum with other people because I've lived different places as well. And just 2 years ago, I spent a little time in Lisbon. It was interesting to see how much further the dollar goes there and what sort of life you could be living instead of paying, $3,500, $4,000 in rent here a month. Okay, so now you've picked these places you've traveled to. What would you say, like, before we wrap this up, but what would you say from a personal development standpoint, a couple of things that you've put here in your book? One, and we'll again link to the book as well so you can order it or read a sample. But what are some of the personal development things that you have in your book and that you've learned over the last few years through your travels?
Yeah, I think the biggest one really pops to mind right now is being patient.
Right.
Like really traveling, especially in other countries, it teaches you to be patient. Like there's things out of your control. Being grateful, I think it's a really important one. Like being able to recognize the good things that are in front of you, that life actually is happening for you. And yeah, really be really be patient with people, with yourself. And Rome wasn't built in one day, so like don't rush through your life.
Right. And you said this earlier to me when you mentioned that one thing too that you've learned, which I find very important, is consistency. Right? If you have a dream, work on it until you make it happen, right? And oftentimes you realize the way is the interesting part. Once you reach that milestone, maybe it's financial freedom for a lot of my viewers, a lot of the listeners. Maybe it's better health. Maybe it's just simply a smaller goal like traveling more. But goals are there to be attained and to be recalibrated. But I do think extreme patience with results, but extreme impatience with actions is important. So I feel what you're saying, but be consistent and don't give up. And I thought that was nice that you brought that up earlier.
Yeah, that's really really what it is. It's the consistency, putting in the work, over and over again. When it's hard, that's why I also mentioned like that's where it's good to have a co-founder.
Right.
That goes with you there, because there are days where everything goes wrong and you're unmotivated, right? Like we entrepreneurs are not like those superheroes and have no feelings. They just keep going.
No, entrepreneurship is rough, very tough.
It's a roller coaster, right? But it's really, success is not a straight line. It's just literally goes up and down. But if you keep your North Star, right, that's why your why is so important. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning. Find your why, find your North Star, and just keep going towards that one day at a time and be consistent.
Well, that's a good way for us to, draw this to a close. What is your why?
My why, my personal why is I want to understand the world, why the world works the way it is. And the Sure Buddies why is we really want to empower kids to stop ocean plastic pollution.
Yeah, that's very cool. Any last nuggets of wisdom? Anything you want to share with our audience here today? Anything that you'd like to impart before we
get this book? This is literally the funniest book out there. It's a sarcastic spin on self-improvement. So while your typical self-improvement books, they teach you live your best life, go, you can do it, check out. This is a gentle kick in the butt while you're still in your rut.
Alright, The Art of Self-Destruction. Mr. Malte Niebelschuetz, my pleasure having you here today.
Hey, it's an honor.
Yep. And thanks for tuning in, guys. And we will see you on the flip side and the next one. Peace.